Hi, my name is Vanessa. Welcome to this video. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how to avoid going downward spirals and 3 ways to get out of them. So, first of all, what is a downward spiral? We all have an idea of what it is. You know that horrible feeling when you have a negative thought pattern, a doubt, a fear, a worry, and to begin with, it's not so bad. Maybe it's just a subtle negative thought. But then you start to entertain it a little bit, and then suddenly, before you know it, you have more reasons to become fearful, and more reasons to worry, and more reasons to feel more down because thoughts are magnetic in nature. So when you have a negative thought, it will attract to it more negative thoughts. And the more you entertain and pay attention to these thoughts, the more information and data you're going to extract from your life, the more reasons you're going to find in order to support the fear, to support the worry, to support the negativity. So what happens is where attention goes, energy flows. So the more you're paying attention to these thought patterns, the more you're paying attention to problems instead of solutions, the more globalized and the bigger the problem becomes. And before you know it, you are in the pit of despair. You feel hopeless. You feel like you have total lack of resources, and you feel like giving up and that everything is going to fail. Sounds familiar? And maybe all of this happened in just the time span of 20, 30 minutes. And in reality, nothing has actually changed in that time. Your reality is pretty much the same apart from your state, apart from your frequency, apart from your inner alignment. So 20, 30 minutes ago, you might have felt pretty capable of handling whatever was coming your way. And now suddenly you feel like you're incapable and everything is going to go to shit. Simply because of your state, simply because of your thought pattern. And the reason we want to avoid going down these downward spirals is not because it's bad to have negative thoughts, is not because it's bad to feel down. It's not because you shouldn't feel sad. It's because of what it does to your frequency and your alignment to yourself. And by all means, you can hang out in despair for as long as you want to. You can feel hopeless for as long as you want to. And actually, sometimes we can find some golden nuggets in these lower frequencies. But if you have a desire to be resourceful, to feel like you have a can-do attitude, to get out of despair, to get out of hopelessness, and to climb the frequential ladder so that you can feel resourceful, so that you can feel capable of handling anything and everything that comes your way, then there's a different method that will be better for you. And before we go into that, I want to talk about what creates these downward spirals, because it's not like they just appear out of nowhere. They happen for a reason. So they happen for external reasons and internal reasons. And you might say, well, those are the same. You know, our internal reality dictates our external reality. And yes, that is true to a large extent. But I want to talk a little bit about our external reality first, because you may have a pretty dormant positive attitude towards life. You may have a pretty good belief system in place. You may have a pretty good, thought patterns in place. Maybe you wake up with a general pretty good attitude towards life. But then you're surrounded by people who complain, who whinge, who talk about negative things all the time and just bring your frequency down. So make an assessment of your environment. Who are you surrounding yourself with? You probably heard that we become like the 5 people we hang out with most of the time. So assess the 5 people that you hang out with most of the time, because they are the 5 people that influence you to the greatest extent. Number 2 is our internal state. So we can have internal reasons that create this downward spiral. And this is way, way, way more important than our external reality, because our external reality, we don't always have that much control over. You can't control the people around you. You can't dictate what people are going to think or say. But you can control and learn to master more and more and more your inner state, your inner thought patterns, your emotional landscape. And you can learn how to do this to a high level of excellence. And that way you can gradually become less affected by your external environment. However, I would say that your external environment is important as well. So with your internal environment, this is a mixture of a lot of different things. It's a mixture of your subconscious programming from childhood. It's a mixture of your current situation, what kind of job you're in, what kind of relationship you're in. It's a mixture of your trauma and how much healing that you've done. So your internal landscape is not a simple thing. Your internal landscape is a complex and beautiful combination of emotions, of thought patterns, of frequencies that fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. However, you may have some permanent thought patterns that are stuck and that are creating negative thought patterns over and over and over and over again. And a really good way to assess this is to actually remove yourself from a common environment, place yourself in a totally different environment, and see which kind of thought patterns repeat themselves. So if you go on a holiday and you have an entirely different environment, which kind of thought patterns are still nagging, going in the background, complaining about something, or experiencing hardship with something? And this brings me to the 3 ways to avoid downward spirals. And I'm going to give you a bonus one as well. So method number 1 is heal your trauma. Heal the negative patterns that come up over and over and over and over again. So if you notice there's certain patterns in your life, there's certain negative cycles that keep playing themselves out over and over and over again, no matter which environment that you're in, make sure that you bring loving awareness to that, seek professional help. If it's a relationship problem, get relationship help. If it's money blocks, get help with your finances. If it's a health issue, get help with your health. Address it, do something about it, prioritize yourself, stop self-neglecting yourself, stop just being miserable and not doing something about it. Address yourself. And of course, I would recommend the power method if it's a mental emotional problem, and do subconscious reprogramming because that's what I specialize in. But there are plenty of healing modalities out there. There's so many tools to heal trauma, to heal blocked emotions, to heal childhood programming, to, you can even just go do a free Google search and there will be lots of information and resources that can literally solve any problem that you have. So that's step number 1, heal your trauma. And I know that sounds like, oh, am I just going to do that overnight? No, of course not. That is a journey in and of itself. But if there is a trauma in your body, in your mind, in your soul that is stuck, that needs to be healed, it's time to address that. And tip number 2 is do a pattern interruption. So when you first notice that there's a negative thought popping in your head, that you're starting to contemplate something of negative nature, and you're starting to feel this sort of magnetization of negative thoughts, and it's starting to become globalized, do a pattern interruption. What do I mean with pattern interruption? So if you're in your bedroom and you're laying in your bed and you're just ruminating on negativity, catch yourself and stop and do a pattern interruption. So that could mean getting up, changing your clothes, brushing your teeth, even having a cold shower, going outside. Change your environment. It doesn't mean that you have to go on a plane and fly to another country, but change your environment, change any and all associations, because by default, by changing your environment, you will change your associations. By placing yourself into another environment, you will get distracted. If you go outside, if you go to a cafe, if you pick up the phone, if you talk to someone, if you engage your mind in something else, you will naturally pay attention to something else and it will just stop that thought pattern. And this is a temporary solution, because if it is a recurring problem for you, then obviously it needs to be addressed. But if you want to avoid really going down a downward spiral, then for a moment, just distract yourself, interrupt the pattern, do something else, and wait until you can come back with a different kind of awareness to the problem, with a solution-oriented awareness to the problem, and not a globalization awareness to the problem. And solution number 3 is practice self-compassion. It can be so common when we're in the lowest of the lows to even throw on top of that shame and guilt. Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this low. Oh, I shouldn't be such a failure. I shouldn't be having all of these negative thoughts. And then we just add more fuel to the fire of negativity. When you're down, when you're in the pit of despair, when you're feeling really low, it's so important to practice self-compassion. And a book that I really, really recommend is Self-Compassion by Christine Neff. This book was such a game changer for me. I've always had quite a very militant inner critic, and by practicing more and more self-compassion, we come to realize that all of our experiences are very human. Any sort of experience that you have is, of course, unique to you, but it is something that is common. It's something that is unifying, that we all experience. We all experience suffering and pain. And just as when a little child falls and they hit themselves and they cry, you would pick them up and give them a hug. And the same thing you have to do for yourself. When you're down, when you're feeling low, you got to love yourself up. You don't hate yourself up. You have to love yourself up. Love is the healing power. Love is the answer to any pain that you have. So practice self-compassion. And if you don't know how to practice self-compassion, read the book, find some resources of how you can turn that energy around. And the bonus one is reach for external, neutral, and positive support. So if you have a friend, if you have a family member, if you have someone close to you who can be of support when you're really down, reach out that hand. I know it can be hard to ask for help when you're down, but really start to practice this form of self-love. It's a form of self-love to reach out for help. It's a form of self-love to ask someone, hey, can you be there for me? Can you hear me out? Can you support me whilst I'm going through this challenge? So if you have someone around you to give you support, ask them. Ask for their opinion. Ask for their support. Ask for their guidance. Because when we're in those moments when we're not able to give ourselves that guidance, when we're not able to give ourselves that support, that's when it's important to remember that we are not alone in this universe. You are surrounded by a gazillion amount of people who can support you. And what this does, it helps to reframe your perspective, because we become so identified with our own perspective that we think that our own perspective is the own true perspective of reality, that our perspective is the reality, and it's just not true. Your perspective is just one perspective, and it doesn't necessarily paint a true picture of reality. Yes, your perspective is valid, and yes, your perspective is important, and your perspective is worth recognizing. But when you find that there's a pain in your perspective, that your perspective is not serving you, and you can recognize, my perspective is not helping me out of the situation here, ask for someone else and ask for their perspective, of a supportive perspective, of a solution-oriented perspective. And this will bring new data points in for your brain to register. This will help to reframe your perspective, and then you can adopt a healthier perspective. Someone might come in and say, hey, you know what? I think actually you're doing really good, and how you accomplish this, and this is great, and you should continue in the right path. This thing you can do a little bit different, but I can give you the guidance on how to do that, and there's plenty of resources out there. And before you know it, you're like, oh, wow, I actually have all of the tools that I need to get me where I want to go. But you were just blind to all of that information because you had all of your awareness and attention in the negative spiral. And when you're down in the negative spiral, you become blind to all of the solutions that are surrounding you all the time. So when you feel blind, when you feel you are not able to pick yourself up, ask someone else to help you up and then to give you solutions that you may not be able to see right now. So those were the 3+1 tips on how to avoid downward spirals and how to get out of them. If you found this helpful, let me know, subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments what you want the next videos to be about. I really appreciate it when you share with me what your experience is and what you want the next videos to be about, because then I create it. So feel free to engage with me, let me know what you want. And if you know of someone who's struggling a little bit right now and needs to get out of a downward spiral, send them this video. We're all in this together. We're all embedded in this web together, in this frequency web together. So when one person is down, it's the strength of the collective web that is able to pull them up again. And the more we actively pay attention to someone who's down and say, hey, come back up, the more we all rise together. So if we have someone who's dropped a little bit, let's make sure that they come up so that we can all rise together. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.